So let's go on ahead and get started. Hi to everybody who's with us. I'm Freya Anderson, and I'm here with Daniel Cornwall, and more excitingly, we're here with two folks from the Alaska Commission on Aging who are going to talk about senior resources available to Alaskan seniors. So I have sort of on my right here, Denise Daniello, and she's the executive director for the commission. And then there's Lesley Thompson, who is also with the commission. And I'm going to instead of spending a lot of time talking about them, I'm going to let them take it away.
Okay, great. So can everybody hear us okay? And can you see the PowerPoint?
I'm going to share the...
Oh, not yet.
Thank you for asking that.
There we go. Okay. All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. It's our pleasure to present this webinar about finding services online for seniors. And we have a lot of information to cover, so if it's okay, we'd like to go through our presentation and then we'll answer questions at the end. So you can either email daniel.cornwall@alaska, spelled out, .gov, your questions, or just wait until the very end to ask them. So just a little commercial about the Alaska Commission on Aging. We were established back in 1981, so we've been around for a long time, for the purpose of assisting older Alaskans to maintain good health, independence, and dignity through planning, advocacy, and outreach. And we always work together in an interagency collaboration. So our commission meets the federal requirement that's required of all states, that each state establish an advisory council to advise the state on matters related to aging. So we have four primary responsibilities. We developed the 4-year Alaska State Plan for Senior Services, and that plan is required by the federal government in order to draw down federal funding through the Older Americans Act that funds many of the senior programs that are non-Medicaid in the state. We also make recommendations directly to the governor, the administration, and the legislature regarding legislative policies and budget items that may impact seniors. And we serve as the statutory advisory board to the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority for, again, budget and policy items that affect senior trust beneficiaries. And these are people who are living with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia, seniors who may suffer from mental health conditions, as well as other behavioral issues like substance misuse. And in total, our commission has 2 staff members and 11 commission members, with 7 of those members being public members aged 60 years of age or older. And we also have 4 designated seats, 1 each for the Department of Health and Social Services, the Department of Commerce, Community and Economic Development, for the chair of the Pioneer Home Advisory Board, because we have a close relationship with the Pioneer Homes, as well as a seat for a senior service provider. And we work in partnership with the Division of Senior and Disability Services to assist the Department of Health and Social Services to carry out its state unit on aging responsibilities. Whereas Senior and Disability Services administers the funding for programs, all of the funding for the variety of senior programs, the Commission does the advocacy, the planning, the education, which are also responsibilities of the State Unit on Aging. So this graph shows the growth of the Alaska senior population over time, and as you can see, the population is growing very rapidly. And, although Alaska has always been considered a young state, I remember when I first moved to Alaska, most people were in their 20s. And now the median age is like 34, so our state is progressively aging. And in fact, many people find it difficult to believe, but Alaska is the state with the fastest growing senior population of people aged 65 and older. Currently, we have about 125,886 Alaskans who are age 60 years and older, and they represent 17% of the state's population. And we have almost 79,000 Alaskans who are age 65 years and older. One of the fastest growing age categories within the senior population are people age 85 and older, who now number almost 6,300 people, but that age group is projected to triple over the next 20 years, so it's growing really fast. And the senior population is the fastest growing age demographic in the state. It's growing faster than youth, than middle-aged people. It's a very fast-growing population.
All right. So my name's Lesley Thompson again, and I'm a planner, which means I do whatever Denise tells me to do. We used to have 4 staff, and because of budget cuts, much like other areas in the state, there's 2 of us now. And we do try to keep on top of as much as we can about future trends, not only in Alaska, but in the U.S. and internationally. I did some research on use of technology for seniors, and I know that one of the reasons that we wanted to come and talk about the use of online public assistance programs for seniors is they are growing as a huge demographic using technology. You'll see with this chart that it's growing more and more. Of course, the oldest is more resistant to try, but sometimes when they try, they really like using technology. Many have cell phones, many have iPads and tablets, etc. So we're up to about 32% of seniors will actually have some sort of technology, but I know in many of your communities, they're going to come to you and ask for help with technology or ask how to find certain things online. Now, we are not experts in public assistance programs, but I've spent a lot of time, and Denise knows a lot about what kinds of programs are available for seniors. And so we really tried to find how to find it within the state website. And I know some of you have used that website more than others. So we're really going to try to walk you through exactly where it is. So that's why there's so many slides about the state page. But this will really help seniors navigate their way through the public assistance programs. There may be some folks, I'm sure in most of the communities that will listen to this will have some folks that are from public assistance in their community, and they're getting budget cuts as well. So I think one of the best ways is to go online and find out what's there, and then to actually go into the office if you can. They have a huge backlog of caseloads, so their phone will even say, we'll try to get back to you as soon as we can, but sometimes it takes a while. So you guys are really helping seniors in a really positive way by watching and listening to this little workshop. So right now I have a slide, if you have the slides on page 5. There's resources and where to find them. And the first 3, Aging and Disability Resource Centers, are probably they're mandated by the federal government. They're a one-stop shop for people who are aging and have disabilities. And they're located throughout the state, but not every community has one. But there's a state website and phone number. There's also your local senior center, if you have one in your community, that often has good information. And then it is on our state page, it's Alaska 211, or you just dial 211, and I'll go through that in just a minute. But that has really good information as well. So you don't have to navigate everything. There's people that are there to help. And then on the Alaska website, we listed down below what else is there to help you, the long-term care ombudsman, our Alaska Commission on Aging. Senior and Disabilities Services. A lot of times people say just one disability, but it's lots of disabilities. Pioneer Home, Public Assistance, Medicare, and Medicaid, and then the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. And then and there's also quite a few other programs, but we're highlighting the bigger ones. And then there's Social Security on the federal side, but there's also some links on our state homepage with how to find information on Social Security, which is very helpful.
So this is Denise. So we're going to start by looking at the alaska.gov page. And we're going to scroll to where it says the Department of Health and Social Services, because there are several divisions within the Department of Health and Social Services that provide services for seniors. So going on to the next page, you can see all the different divisions and programs that offer services for seniors. And the black arrow shows on the left-hand side under boards and commissions, that's for the Alaska Commission on Aging lives if you clicked on that. So here's our website for the Alaska Commission on Aging, and we have a lot of information about seniors. We have the Alaska State Plan for Senior Services that we kind of talked about. Again, that brings down the federal funding for a variety of senior programs like senior meals, transportation, respite, homemaker services, elder justice, legal services for seniors, and much, much more, senior housing and so forth. And it's a plan that has a lot of data and statistics in it. A lot of people use it for information for grant writing purposes. And it has 6 goals, objectives, and action steps that we use to implement the report. We also have the Alaska Roadmap to address Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. This is the first and only state plan to address the needs of this growing population of people with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. And currently there are about 7,100 people age 65 and older with Alzheimer's disease, and that doesn't even include the related dementias of Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia, Parkinson's disease, and so forth. We also produce an annual report every year. This highlights issues having to do with seniors. It's an excellent resource of information for these issues and things that are going on in the state that affect seniors. In there we publish the Senior Snapshot, which is basically a compilation of data about health and wellness indicators for Alaska seniors, and it's updated every year. And we also produce the watch list of bills that the Commission is watching during legislative session that are of interest to seniors, as well as budget items. There's all of our letters that we write to legislators, the governor, as well as congressional members about issues having to do with seniors. For example, we did a lot of work having to do with the recent healthcare reform debate. And so a lot of really good information. In addition to elder abuse, so Lesley's going to talk about that.
But before you mention it, can you tell us how many hits we get on our website?
No?
But I mean,
I can't remember.
We get a lot of hits,
I know that last month we were the top 3 websites in the state.
Wow.
That had hits from public members about the information that we provide. So yeah, that was a lot of kudos to the Commission. There's also governor proclamations too that are posted on our website, and something that's coming up on September 21st or September 22nd is Senior Fall Prevention Awareness. So we'll have information about that. So we should go.
So we spend a lot of time on it, and hopefully it's utilized. And in the snapshot, it's really helpful if you have anybody writing grants for seniors. There's lots of good information in there. And also on our website, we really know how important it is to let people know how to report elder abuse, whether it be in a home or in a assisted living or nursing home. So that information is right on our homepage. It's also in other places within the state website, but if you can think of looking at our site, it's probably the easiest place to find it. And I would encourage you to encourage people to report elder abuse, because many times they don't, and it's a real big problem everywhere. So please look at that information. The long-term care ombudsman is the piece that actually does assisted living and nursing homes. They use volunteers, and they travel around the state checking out assisted living nursing homes, letting people that live in those areas know their rights and how they're protected. So if you ever have a question, or if you have a complaint, there is a form. The state loves forms, so that you can fill out, or please feel free, if somebody wants to do a complaint, just to call. Same with the Adult Protective Services, and that's for people 18 and over. So then we're going to go.
So now we're back to the Department of Health and Social Services webpage, and so these arrows all point to the state-funded programs within the Department of Health and Social Services that offer services for seniors, and we're going to touch on many of these in our presentation. So the first division that we're going to talk about is the Division of Senior and Disability Services and the variety of services that they provide, because they do a lot for seniors as well as other vulnerable Alaskans, including people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and youth with complex medical conditions. So the first one we're going to talk about is the Aging and Disabilities Resource Centers. So this is the webpage for the Aging and Disability Resource Centers. A lot of times people, when they need long-term support services, it just happens. Something happens in their life where they need these services, or the family needs to know where they can get services and supports to help their elderly loved one at home, and you don't know where to start. So that's the purpose of these Aging and Disability Resource Centers, is to help people to navigate this very complex system of long-term support services. And so sometimes people have questions about, where do I go to find out about transportation? Like yesterday I had a call, and we're not even an Aging and Disability Resource Center, but we are on the Elder Locator, so we get a lot of phone calls too, about this spouse who had a husband who was under a lot of pain. He had severe abdominal pain, suffered a stroke, and she lived in an area that was outside of Anchorage and had to transport him, and he can't sit. So it's not a matter of just taking a taxi cab or a drive over. It was a very complicated thing. And sometimes people have questions about, well, how do I sign up for senior benefits? Where do I go for heating assistance? How about food stamps? Medicare and Social Security. I also have a lot of questions about those issues, about legal assistance for seniors. So the ADRCs provide this information, and they also provide options counseling in assessing a person's needs to see what types of services they may be eligible for. And the ADRCs are funded in part with a grant from the Administration on Community Living, which is a federal program, in combination with the state, as well as funding from the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority. There are 5 regional Aging and Disability Resource Centers in the state. In these locations, in Anchorage, Matsu, Bristol Bay, Kenai Peninsula also covers Homer, the Central Peninsula, which includes Soldotna and Seward. The Southeast Alaska Aging and Disability Resource Center is operated by the Southeast Alaska Independent Living Center, and it has the largest number of community sites in Juneau, Haines, Ketchikan, and Sitka. At this time, these are the only areas that have a regional ADRC. So for other areas outside these areas, like Fairbanks or areas north of Fairbanks, they can call the statewide number, which is listed here.
Then we have the resource 211, and this is funded by United Ways across the state. And this has become a really good resource since 2007. They've had over 200,000 Alaskans call 211 for information. They have information on emergency food and shelter, housing, counseling, health care, child care, drug and alcohol programs, legal assistance, transportation needs, educational opportunities. So they have this huge data bank of all kinds of resources. And anyone across the state just dials 211 and it'll come up and you'll get into United Way. And they're basically 8 to 5. And they do a lot of housing, seems to be a real issue with seniors, and they do some housing referral information. And they do quite a few calls a year on food and utilities. Many times people can't afford their utilities, so they'll get some information on what to do with that. The other thing they have, you can call 211, or on there I have the website alaska211.org, and you can access their database on any internet, any computer, tablet, phone, and you just type in the area code or the zip code, and it'll bring up all kinds of great information. So in fact, when you're doing something at the library, you may want to look at that to see if you've got all the organizations available. And they do have an app for that, which I think is really kind of cool.
Can I interrupt for one second? I
yeah.
wanted to highlight in particular, because this isn't on the state network, this is available also through SLED for
Great. Yeah.
just another way to access that.
Yeah. Good.
Great.
Thank
yeah.
you.
And then this is what it looks like when you just put in a search and what comes up. So it's a really good resource.
So now we're going to go back to the Division of Senior and Disability Services to talk about senior grant-funded services. There are a whole variety of senior grant-funded services, and on the left-hand side below that red arrow points to some of the services. The adult day programs, education and support for people with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia, the health promotion, disease prevention program, the family caregiver support services, nutrition, transportation, and support services, which is the largest of the senior grant programs. That's the one that provides the senior meals, rides, homemaker services, care coordination, and so forth. And the Aging and Disability Resource Centers and many other services. And these services are available to people aged 60 years and older. You don't have to meet an income requirement. Anybody who is age 60 years and older can participate in these activities. However, with some of these programs, there's a strong suggestion for a donation because federal funding is limited. Federal and state funding is limited. And then this page features one of the programs, Adult Day Services, that's funded by the senior grant funded programs. There's also the Senior In-Home Services. This provides respite and homemaker services for seniors who live at home. There's the National Family Caregiver Support Services that provides respite and counseling and other types of supports for family caregivers. And this program also provides support for grandparents raising grandchildren because there's an increasing number of older people taking care of their grandchildren, as well as the Alzheimer's disease and related dementia education support programs. Those services are provided by the statewide Alzheimer's Resource Agency located in Anchorage, but they have offices throughout the state and in many rural communities. So by clicking on an individual program type, you can find a listing of services provided in the community. So for example, if you clicked on the adult day services, this page would show the 12 programs that we have available in the state. And adult day programs are really important programs for frail seniors, particularly those who live with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. It provides a safe, supportive, and nurturing place for seniors to go, to make sure that they're safe and also to have the support and companionship of others. It's also a place that family caregivers can bring their loved ones for respite purposes because everybody needs a break. And working family caregivers depend a lot on this program because when they go to work, it's not safe to leave their people at home, and they want their mom and dad or grandparents to be with them.
Lesley, I have a question. This is Katie from Kodiak. I just want to make sure I understand, because we do have grandparents who are raising their grandchildren here in Kodiak as a result of some of the social situations in our community. So did I hear you that, are you saying some adult day services are offering programs to assist those grandparents?
No, this is Denise. Maybe I was speaking too fast. What I said was that the Family Caregiver Support Program, and there is one available there in Kodiak, as well as an adult day program, but the Family Caregiver Support Program provides supports for grandparents raising grandchildren. And the main office that provides that particular support is located in Anchorage. So you would, your person that you would be helping, would need to call the Anchorage office. I think it's important also to underscore that, we're doing this presentation to help librarians to become more familiar with all the different programs that are offered through the state, but that individuals can also call these aging and disability resource centers and talk through specific problems that they may have, because they're the ones, the aging and disability resource centers are the ones that have the most expertise in these areas. Also, senior centers, too, are a great resource, too, for people to go. And, they're the ones who have all those great programs that seniors enjoy. But
Thank you so much for that clarification. That's really helpful.
Yeah. So also I wanted to, this is Denise again, wanted to talk a little bit about the home and community-based waivers. This is another big program that's administered by the Division of Senior and Disability Services. The waivers are funded with federal funding as well as state funding. So it's a 50-50 match that we have in Alaska. And currently we have 4 waiver programs. The first one is the one that's utilized most by seniors, and that's Alaskans Living Independently waiver, and it's available to people aged 21 years and older. I think last year it served 2,126 people, of which 2/3 of them were seniors. It provides meals, transportation, homemaker or chore services, which is like homemaker service. They call it chore because it's Medicaid funded, but it's basically the same thing. Help with housekeeping. Care coordination, respite for family caregivers, as well as environmental modifications. So, for example, if a person needed a ramp and they qualified for this program, they could get a ramp through this program. In order to qualify for these waivers, you have to, first of all, meet the income requirements as well as meet nursing home level of care, because our state offers a choice for people to either have services provided to them in a nursing home if they meet that level of care, or they can receive these services through home and community-based services. So, for example, like the Kodiak Senior Center or in Fairbanks, there's a variety of programs there too that offer these waiver services. The Fairbanks North Star Council on Aging Senior Center, Fairbanks Resource Agency Adult Day Program, and others offer these types of services to help people to age in place. The other 3 waivers that the state provides include the adults with physical and developmental disabilities, and that's available to people aged 21 and older who have been determined to be developmentally and physically disabled. There's also the children with complex medical conditions that serve children and young adults under the age of 22 who are in need of these types of services. And then Lastly, there's the intellectual and developmental disability services for people who acquire a mental, physical impairment before the age of 22, and it affects 3 major life domains, and they're expected never to recover from that condition, and so there's a waiver to provide those services. On the SDS website, on the right-hand side, there's a brochure that describes all these different waivers and the types of services that are provided. And then another Medicaid service is personal care services, and this one's also utilized by a lot of seniors. In order to qualify for this program, you have to meet the Medicaid income requirements and require hands-on care. So that means somebody needs help with eating, or preparing meals. They may need help getting dressed, with bathing, personal life activities. And this is a very popular program with seniors. We had, I think, more than 4,000 people utilize these services last year. And again, it's another Medicaid type program that's funded through the federal government and the state with general funds. It's a 50-50 match.
So now we're on to the Medicare Information Office, and that's on page 24. And we have a lot of seniors every day turning 65, and even a couple months before, people start thinking Medicare, how am I going to sign up for Medicare, have all kinds of questions. Well, currently we have a great Medicare Information Office. We're hoping the funding will go through for next year, but right now we have a great office that has also trained a lot of volunteers throughout the state. So it's a really great educational opportunity that they have, and they'll give you one-on-one counseling, so they'll answer your specific questions. There is a whole page dedicated to the Medicare Information Office, and they're really good about answering their phones and getting right back to you if you have to leave a message. So, and also if there's any Medicare errors or waste or fraud, they're also very interested. And sometimes it's very hard to know the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. So Medicare is when, mostly when you are turning 65 and have paid into the system, and you'll be signing up for that insurance. So, and they will be glad to explain anything to anybody about Medicare and Part D and all that kind of stuff. So this is a very good resource for seniors. And as you can see, there's quite a few offices around the state, but also, as I mentioned, they have volunteers around the state, and they do a lot of traveling. They do a lot of different workshops around the state and try to get out and about. A lot of times they'll go to senior centers. Hopefully when they do that, they'll publicize through you folks, the libraries. So this is another really good federally funded program. And then we're on to page 26, which is the Pioneer Homes. And they've been in the news lately with proposed budget cuts and budget cuts. This is also something that you'll think about either as you turn 65 or as you're getting closer to wanting to be in the Pioneer's home. And the average age, I believe now, is 86 years of age. So they're quite a bit older now. Before, it used to be closer to 71 was the average age. That was in the 70s. So the Pioneer's Home, if you can encourage people to sign up at 65, when they turn 65, that gets them on the list and gets them maybe 20 years out or so. If they've been on the list that long, it'll get them towards the top of the list. So when they're ready to go in, they'll be on the list. So many times they're serving now more and more people with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, but they're a really good quality program, and they have several throughout the state. And you can go to any one, you can sign up for any of the one Pioneer Homes, but the encouraging thing here is get people to sign up as soon as possible. They can sign up anytime they're over 65, but not before.
And just to let you know, there were, in the end, although there was a lot of threats of having significant budget cuts for the Pioneer programs, there were no cuts. So actually there was a little bump. So that was good for the Pioneer Homes. And there are 6 located statewide.
And one is in Palmer's for veterans. So, and then there is an application right on the Alaska Pioneer Homes website. So it doesn't take too long to fill out. At one point they were talking about charging to be on the wait list, but that is not the case at this point. So if people have questions of the Pioneer Homes, the website's there, but also please feel free to call their office. And all the directors are very nice people. Okay, this next slide is, and we just wanted to kind of give you an idea of the public assistance programs that most seniors use. And you can see in the blue, it's adult public assistance, which, and that's how many people are on that program, in that program. And then you can see senior benefits in there. So it just shows you some of the trends. It's remained pretty consistent because I think more than anything, sometimes the funding is such that it is, or for whatever reason, people aren't choosing to sign up with our increasing population. There's also, some people think there's a huge migration out of the state, or they think there's a huge migration into the state. Our population has grown, and we see that for the people that leave the state that are Alaskans, they move down south, we have as many moving in. So,
well, actually, the growth of the senior population is not attributed to in-migration of seniors, but it's the natural aging of the current people, who have lived here for a long time. And it's baby boomers who are aging into their senior years.
Yes, so then we're on to some real tangible places that you can find information.
So like these programs here are offered by the Division of Public Assistance.
Yes, and again, this page, it's called the Division. We showed back in the very beginning in the Health and Social Services website, there's a place to click onto this public assistance area, and you can see what things you can click, what services you can click to find out information. I think, as I mentioned before, public assistance has received some significant budget cuts over the years, so I would really encourage you to have people look at these websites before they make calls, because I called yesterday just to kind of see what the wait list and such is to get a phone call returned, and they said mostly they're working on case files and not really able to return many calls. So the more that you can help folks through navigating through this, the better, I believe. And then we're into adult public assistance. This kind of tells you a little bit about who it serves. We have there's an income level, blind and disabled Alaskans that want to remain independent. And there is a printable form that you can use on the website. That's another nice thing, is you can download forms and send them in, which expedites things. There's also a form where public assistants have combined all the programs, and you fill out one form and click all, or check all the forms or assistance programs you're interested in. So if you do have a public assistance office in your community, if you could get some public assistance forms for the library, I think that would be wonderful. And then senior benefits, and this program has been in the news lately as well. This program kind of came out of when the longevity bonus was deleted, cut off. They came up with a way to serve low-income seniors, which is wonderful. And this is where there's age differences. Some you start at 60. This one is for people 65 and older. And it's for folks who are pretty much low to moderate income. And on this page, there'll actually be some information about what amount of money that you must make or bring in every month to be eligible for these cash payments. And at the very low end of the spectrum, folks who don't have much money, the highest one is $250 per month. And the ones who make a little bit more money, it's $175, and then $276 is where the folks that have the most money that are eligible will receive. Now, many people think, oh, that's not a whole lot of money. Is it even worth it? All the information that we have received when we've talked about this program and advocated for this program, that $76 can make such a difference. Sometimes it's the difference between being able to buy medications or food. So again, there's the form right there. The challenge is they don't answer their phone, and they actually say that. So this is where the website is really vital to be able to print their application and send it in.
And I know we're running out of time, so we're going to try to go a little bit faster through these programs, but I just wanted to mention real quick that the Senior Benefits Program is up for reauthorization on July 1 of next year. So we are working with legislators to try to get this program reestablished. So it's an important program for seniors.
And it's 100% funded by the state of Alaska. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's a little vulnerable.
And it's very unique.
Then the next one we have is SNAP, otherwise known as Food Stamp Program. And on the form from Public Assistance, you can check that if they're interested in applying. And that sometimes they're backed up like by 3 months. So encourage people to get in applications as quickly as possible. But if they're in real need, sometimes they can expedite that. Heating assistance, we are down to one program. The state used to offer heating assistance. Well, actually, there's some Alaska Native program funding for heating assistance, but there is only one federal program that for everyone that meets a certain threshold, 150% of poverty, and the program opens in October 1st. So it's kind of like the sooner you get your application in, the better, because the money, once it's gone, it's gone. So,
and the federal program is called the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, LIHEAP.
Yes. And then as we're just finishing up real quickly, this one is Temporary Assistance Program. And this one is more for low-income families, but if you have grandparents raising grandchildren, they are eligible for this program. Okay, so we're on to Medicaid. So since we don't have much time, and Medicaid is a very, very difficult program to understand, there is right on the information on their homepage, there's a place where people actually can click on a link to see if they're eligible, kind of right off the hand, how much they have in their household, how much they make, and if they may or may not be eligible. Don't let that stop them, but that gives them an idea. This is again where the Aging and Disabilities Resource Centers can help people navigate through Medicaid. It is an entitlement program. It is funded half by the federal government and half by the state. And I would just encourage people to use those resources. There is some good information on Medicaid, but it's pretty hard to navigate.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to say that, Mrs. Denise, that Medicaid is a funding source for a variety of programs that provide cash assistance, like what we were just talking about through the Division of Public Assistance, the public assistance programs, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, those types of programs are Medicaid funded. Medicaid also funds long-term support services and insurance. And I'm sure many of you have heard about Medicaid expansion, and providing health care coverage for people who can't afford it. And it's the insurance for long-term care. So a lot of times people think, when they have to go into a nursing home, Medicare is going to cover the cost of those services. But in actuality, Medicare will only cover the first 60 days. And then once a person is income eligible, the Medicaid then kicks in and covers their care in the nursing home. So that's a big, I think, important thing to remember about Medicaid. And the difference with Medicare is a program that people contribute to while they're working. And so that provides health care insurance, like if you go to your doctor in the primary care setting, or for surgery that you might get, Medicare will cover those types of health care services. But it's the Medicaid that actually covers the nursing home, long-term nursing home care, as well as a lot of the long-term support services that we talked about earlier, including personal care services, the waiver programs, and that type of help.
And the one thing about assisted living and nursing homes is you might not be eligible for Medicaid initially, but a nursing home will cost you anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 a month. So your money goes pretty quickly. Assisted living, maybe $4,000 to $6,000 a month. So your money goes very quickly. People don't realize how much long-term care costs.
Yeah, and in Alaska, if you're in a nursing home, private pay, you could pay as much as $297,000
a year.
So it's really expensive.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. So start saving.
Social Security.
So we're going to talk about this. The Social Security is a federal program. Again, it's very, very, very difficult to get through to a Social Security office. We get several calls a year about that, and I've tried myself. But there is some information. It's kind of hard to find, or you can just search on the state website. But it's in the Department of Administration, so it's not in Health and Social Services. And then you go through retirements and benefits, and then there's another section. I kind of showed you how to navigate it because it takes a little while to get there. But once you get there, there's some really good information about Social Security. There's good links and helps. So it's under retirements and benefits, and on page 40 is where you finally get to Social Security information. So don't give up, because, and then you can also go right to the federal websites, but this is really a nice site for trying to navigate the Social Security questions that you have. And then for senior housing, again, we talked about how it's one of the most talked about issues of seniors, having affordable quality housing. 211 is sometimes they'll even let you know what is available, what housing stock is available in a community, and what who to call and try to find out information. So I would encourage you to do that. And then Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, again, you'll have to Google it within the state homepage, but they
It's
have
under the Department of Revenue.
Yep.
Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, and in there is the Senior Housing Office. And for people who want to know about, what kind of housing opportunities are available in their communities, they can call the Senior Housing Office. The contact name and phone number is there. The Senior Housing Office also receives some funding through the legislature for the Senior Citizen Housing Development Fund, which helps to build or rehab new independent senior housing for seniors. For example, Ravens Landing in Fairbanks was built with Senior Citizen Housing Development funds. They also do renovation work too with those funds, and do some building of assisted living. And this program also offers the Senior Access Program, which provides funding for accessible improvements for senior households of people aged 55 years and older. And you would call the 4 agencies that serve, that provide this program that include the Interior Regional Housing Authority in Fairbanks, Rural CAP, the Alaska Community Development Corporation, and the Anchorage Neighborhood Housing Services. So that's it. And that's just a little smattering, but there's a lot of great programs that the state of Alaska offers, utilizing general funds, the state's general funds, as well as federal funding. And so we just try to, just give you some ideas about what's available, and we're available for questions.
Shall we share the presentation?
Sure.
So there were no questions that came in via email, so are there any questions from Bethel?
No, I don't think so. This was very informative. Thank you.
Oh, good, good.
Thank you. Any more questions from Kodiak?
No, this was very informative, and we're getting ideas for ways to take some of this info and create a slideshow that we'll run at our main desk for our patrons.
Wonderful.
So can we make use of that Alaskan Seniors Living Longer, Growing Stronger, that brand that showed up in one of the slides?
Yeah, and that's our, for the Commission on Aging, and yeah, just know that it's, the Alaska Commission on Aging.
We'll cite
Yeah.
you. Okay, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you so much. Yes, thank you.
And for people who that have attended and who will listen online, we did put together a pre and post test, a SurveyMonkey. So if you haven't taken the pre-test, if you could, and then we'll be sending out a post test, and just to kind of see, again, what kinds of things that you may still have questions on or may need, or if we didn't cover something like we could have, let us know.
And we do have the slides online. I know you were mentioning slide numbers periodically during the presentation. So those are available online at our series page, which is lam.alaska.gov. That's lam.alaska.gov/ is it government or gov?
Gov, I think.
Yeah,
GovInfo.
GovInfo without tears.
Yeah. It's so funny because when I saw that link name, I said to Freya, I said, geez, am I reading this right? Well, people, what does that mean? And she said, well, so people don't tear their hair out, when they're trying to find something.
So the slides are up, and I'm going to be posting some of the key links from the presentation up there as well, so you don't necessarily have to go through the whole presentation to find some of those key links.
And
And we'll be emailing the survey shortly.
Yeah, and if you have specific questions, just feel free to give us a call. Our general number is 465-3250, or you can call me directly at 465-4879. And you
And
have
it's on
our
page
email.
two as
And
well.
you have our email.
And just my own personal plug, I know from personal experience with friends and family members, really do encourage them the day they turn 65 to apply for the Pioneer Home. I know people who have gone through just horrible times, unable to live in their own communities because they needed care and they hadn't signed up in a timely fashion, so that 20 years later when they needed it, it took them a long time. And I have a dear friend who ended up living for a year in Palmer, which is a wonderful place, but he hated it because it wasn't home. And I'm firmly convinced that the stress of moving back and forth took quite a lot of time off of his life. So even if they don't need it, even if they're not going to need it for a long time, just apply, get on the list.
Yeah, because just because you sign up doesn't mean that you have to go in tomorrow. And
Or at any point.
yeah, or at any
Right,
point,
right.
you're always given the option, you know, and but it's just good insurance. It's just good to
So-
know that you have.
So what happens if you apply and your number comes up and you're not ready to?
Then
to
you
go
could
in
just
yet?
tell them, I'm not ready. And so
You
then,
go back to the end of the list,
No,
or what happens?
no, there's an active and an inactive list.
right,
So you stay on the inactive list
Mm.
until you're ready to.
And then you notify the Pioneer Homes to say that, you know, I'm going to need this service, and then you're put on the active wait list, and then they call you.
But you're put on the
Okay.
active wait list based on how long you've been on the whole list.
Gotcha, okay.
So sign up
Yeah.
when you turn 65,
Yeah,
when you're signing up for Social Security and Medicare.
yep. Do it all at once.
Yep.
And there will be a this is being recorded, so the recording will be posted, and I know not everybody who had hoped to come was able to connect. So, and possibly even others in your own libraries for timing or whatever. So please do share that recording once it's available.
And it'll be on our website too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
And thank you so
Thank you
much for
so much
coming.
for being